Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Nintendo DS emulation on Android with melonDS, and melonDS just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, beta version 1.10.0 is the latest update, and this update is a pretty big one. There's a whole bunch of fixes, improvements, and brand new features. They've added OpenGL renderer with resolution scaling up to 8 times native graphics. On top of that, they've added support for manual cheat input. They've added a button to toggle microphone input. They've added visual indicators for toggle buttons. They've added support for memory expansion GBA slot. It now allows DSiWare title data to be imported or exported. They've improved foldable support. They've added Italian translations and even more. melonDS is currently one of the best Nintendo DS emulators on Android, and over on the Google Play Store, it's got over 1 million downloads. Now, taking a look at the Google Play Store, and it hasn't been updated here yet. The last update was December 22nd, 2023. So it has been a while. But the APK is available over on GitHub, and if you're curious about it and wanted to learn more about it, like everything we talk about, link is in the description below right at the bottom. Unfortunately, I don't have a timetable as to when melonDS will be updated on Google Play, but I'm assuming fairly soon. And it appears the next steps for melonDS Android is going to be multiplayer. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But I would say this is a very, very big release for melonDS. Next up here, we're talking about Acclaim, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about this one before, but Acclaim is on its way back. There seems to be one pretty big hiccup though. According to TimeExtension.com, Acclaim skirts around the issue of which of its classic IPs it actually has access to. Now, from my understanding, Acclaim will be focusing on indie games and their classic library, and they've got a pretty huge library here, and not knowing what they have IP rights to is probably a huge problem. So here is part of the quote. Acclaim will also have a secondary focus, which will be on identifying classic IP that can be rejuvenated and introduced to the current and future audience of gamers. We certainly have relationships with stakeholders and access to many of the classic old school titles from Acclaim, but the emphasis will be on selecting those that we feel will do justice to the original game and elevate the Acclaim brand overall. So let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below, but the way I'm reading this is that if they don't know what games they have the rights to, selecting the games that they do have the rights to will probably be their top priority. And out of those games, I'm curious to see which ones are good and which ones are arguably not as good. I'm curious to see what games they don't have the rights to as well, but overall here there's probably a limited pool that they can select and can use. And speaking about Acclaim, next up here we're talking about Acclaim and Mortal Kombat Nitro for the SNES. If you're not familiar with this game, I don't blame you. It was never officially released. And based on the title alone, it does sound kind of like a ROM hack. Now, this game was meant to be taking place between MK1 and MK2 from an actual timeline perspective. And this game never saw the light of day until now. There is a video up here showcasing this game in action. There is quite a bit of information in this video. The video itself is an hour and 17 minutes long, and it's up on TabMock99's channel. And the video does feature one of the developers of this game. There are some interesting characters that you couldn't play in MK1, like Reptile and Goro. And it is a very cool game. I wish it was released on the SNES. There's a lot of information in this video. And speaking about YouTube videos, next up we're talking about the Sonic Unleashed PC port, Unleashed Recompiled. And if you are curious about learning more about this entire project, I do recommend checking out this YouTube video. This video is a lot shorter than an hour and 17 minutes. This one's just 14 minutes and 30 seconds. And it does go into a lot of detail about the effort that goes into a PC port like this and what other PC ports can gain because of this one. And no, it doesn't mean other PC ports of Xbox 360 games are going to be simple and straightforward because this one was done. I don't know about you, but I find videos like this very interesting to kind of get an insight as to what goes on behind the process and what the developers are working with. And speaking about interesting stuff, next up here we're talking about GameStop, and well, this is a very interesting story. I guess it turns out someone tried to sell a PS4 Pro to GameStop without cables and a controller and stuff. And it turned out in order for GameStop to take that PS4 Pro, the person would have to pay GameStop, not the other way around. Now, over the years, there's been a number of jokes about GameStop and trade-in values and gamers not getting a whole lot of money for stuff they're trading into GameStop. But this is the first time I've ever heard of a story where someone has to pay GameStop. It turns out they have to pay something around $5 for GameStop to take that PS4 Pro off their hands. And even worse here, because yes, the story gets worse. I guess they would have had to pay GameStop $20 to take an Xbox One off their hands. That is crazy. You're selling something to GameStop and having to pay them instead of getting a couple of bucks. This to me tells me of problems with GameStop's the used sales system with GameStop. It's just, well, this is definitely something. Based on this, I don't ever plan on going to GameStop to sell anything used. I probably just sell it on my own. Not going to lie here, I am very curious to hear your thoughts on the matter in the comments below. I mean, if this is true, it's a very weird take from GameStop. Maybe not. Maybe it's on brand. I mean, we've gone from getting like 15 cents or $1 on some stuff to, well, paying them instead. You get nothing, they get everything and more. Just so weird. And speaking about weird, and also Sony, next up here we're talking about Sony and AI. And there's a video on the internet that's circling around. It's getting taken down quite a bit when it's posted on YouTube. But it's of Aloy and AI. It seems as if PlayStation Studios has an advanced technology group, and they've created an AI version of Aloy that can hold a conversation with a player through voice prompts during gameplay. And that to me is wild. It's kind of interesting and cool, but also very wild and weird. It's being reported that this technology demo uses OpenAI. And to me, this gives a very interesting glimpse into the potential future of gaming and what games may offer. I don't know about you, but I can see some good stuff about this and some bad stuff about this. I just think, well, AI now is, used to be just a buzzword, but now it seems to be here to stay. And speaking about AI, next up here, we're talking about Castle of Secrets. And this is an upcoming indie game that hasn't released yet. It's listed as coming soon, and it is generating a bit of controversy surrounding AI and voice acting. This is being reported over on Video Games Chronicle, and like everything we talk about, links are in the description below right at the bottom. But it appears that voice actors are up in arms about it, and understandably so. This person says, hey, voice actors, put a finger down if you were about to be in a video game, but the devs decided that they wanted to use AI-trained voices over your takes for over 4,000 plus lines, then decided to can not only you, but every voice actor they had, refusing other talent on board. They then go on to say, I'd also like to mention for 4,000 plus lines, the base pay was $100, negotiable, but I doubt it was worth it. Now, the way I understand it based on the article is that the studio was hiring voice actors and then using AI and applying a filter to their voice to translate to other characters so they didn't have to hire more voice actors or voice actors for longer. To me, this is a very negative use of AI. Now, it does appear there is some merit behind what this person is saying, because if I head over to the Steam store page for Castle of Secrets and scroll down here, under AI-generated content disclosure, and I'm glad that Steam does this, the developers describe how their game uses AI-generated content like this, sometimes generated voice acting. So that to me adds up. Now, for full transparency, I don't really know voice acting rates that well at all, but 4,000 plus lines for $100 and then utilizing those lines for other characters seems like a very good deal for the studio, and not so much of a good deal for the actual voice actor who's putting the work in. Let me know your thoughts about that one. Next up, we're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Now, if you're on mobile and you're excited about this game headed to mobile, you're going to be excited about this news. This game is set to release on April 15th, and not just on Android, also on iOS. Now, taking a look at the App Store here, and the game does say free to play, but that doesn't necessarily mean the full game. It seems the game is free to try, and then if you wanted to unlock the entire game, you do have to pay. And pre-orders are up for the game, and you can save 10% off the price. At least that's what they're saying. Next up, we're talking about internet security with Have I Been Owned, or Have I Been Pwned, or Subscribe to Mr. Sugeno, or however you want to pronounce it. Anyways, here, Have I Been Pwned is getting a rebrand, and they're saying soft launching and open sourcing Have I Been Pwned. Now, if I'm not mistaken, most of Have I Been Pwned is already open source, at least what they can open source. I don't think that everything they connect to is open source. Anyways, here the UX is being redesigned after 11 years, and the redesign of the UX is completely open source. You can check it out if you want. I think this is a pretty cool thing for the service. And speaking about getting pwned, next up here we're talking about HP printers. And Ars Technica is reporting that a firmware update bricks HP printers and makes them unable to use HP cartridges, which is a really huge problem if you have an HP printer. From my understanding, this does not affect every HP printer out there, and here's a statement from the spokesperson, again over up on Ars Technica. We are aware of a firmware issue affecting a limited number of HP LaserJet 200 series devices, and our team is actively working on a solution. So if you've got an HP LaserJet 200 series, you may want to hold off on updating any drivers for it, or firmware for it rather. I do recommend giving the article a read if you've got an HP LaserJet printer, or if you've just got an HP printer in general and wanted to learn more about it, or just wanted to learn more about the issue in general. I would say here this kind of goes with my line of thinking with printers. I never connect them to the internet. I just download the drivers I need and go from there. I never update the firmware in them, and I'm glad I don't, because stuff like this happens. And by not connecting them to the internet, I don't have to worry about internet security issues and network security issues or anything like that. But apparently this is not the first time something like this has happened by HP. Next up here, if you're a fan of VR and a fan of Postal 2, you're probably going to be a big fan of this news. This news comes courtesy of Running with Scissors, the studio behind Postal 2. And they say Postal 2 VR is real. The most depraved sandbox in gaming history is being rebuilt for VR. Run errands, burn the town down, piss on everything. How will you spend your week in paradise? Unfortunately, I don't have a price or release date just yet, just that this game is in the works. And speaking about stuff in development, next up we're talking about Skate and EA. And I'm shaking my head at this one, and I'm very disappointed. It's being reported that EA has added microtransactions to Skate, which is in a closed alpha. So the in-game currency, which you can purchase with real money, is Sandvan bucks, and then you can use those Sandvan bucks to purchase cosmetic items. And the purpose of having it within the closed alpha is to make sure players have a positive experience when purchasing items from the Skate store. Here's the official quote. To ensure we achieve these goals at early access, we have enabled the option to purchase and use virtual currency in our ongoing closed alpha playtest. Your feedback will be greatly appreciated in providing a great experience at early access launch. I don't know about you, but I don't equate microtransactions with great experience, but maybe that's just me. I really hate to say this, but I am not surprised at all about this, and I'm assuming more games are going to adopt this mentality or this behavior if this seems to be relatively successful. We'll have to wait and see on that one, but I think with the release of Tony Hawk's 3 and 4, it may dent sales a little bit on Skate, but we'll have to wait and see about that one. And speaking about sales, next up we're talking about AMD and NVIDIA GPUs, and it's being reported that AMD shipped more RDNA 4 cards in 1 week than NVIDIA sold RTX 50 cards in 2 months. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not certain on the legitimacy of these numbers, and we may have to wait on this one to see if it applies on a grand scale between AMD and NVIDIA. But I'm curious to see if this does translate later on. I mean, it seems that the RX 9070 XT is far more attractive than something like the RTX 5090. I think from a price point, absolutely. But I mean, at the same time here, if AMD is just pumping out these video cards and making them very accessible and affordable, then NVIDIA may be worried. Let me know your thoughts about that one. And speaking about pumping stuff out, next up we're talking about PlayStation 3 emulation on Android with RPCS3. And the developers have been extremely active, and RPCS3 just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, RPCS3 Android Alpha 4 is the latest release, with the keyword here being alpha. This is not a closed alpha, there are no microtransactions to worry about. This is an open alpha, and it's still in very early stages of development. Don't expect it to be perfect, but expect it to be better than Alpha 3. There seems to be some touchpad improvements, some screen improvements, and even more. If you wanted to see Alpha 4 in action, Andy Tran already has a video up showcasing Tales of Berseria up and running. And like everything we talk about, link is in the description below at the bottom if you wanted to learn more about it. And continuing to talk about PlayStation, next up we're shifting from PS3 to PS4 and talking about PS4 emulation on PC with psOff. And psOff or psOff or subscribe to Mr. Sugeno, depending on how you wanted to pronounce that one, just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, 2025 March 12th is the latest and greatest update here. It does get updated quite frequently, so possibly by the time you're watching this video, they've already got a new version. And there's quite a bit of changes here. There seem to be a number of UI changes, and they say the emulator now runs games at the frame rates that the developers intended. And there's also improvements here for better compatibility with Intel CPUs. Next up, if you've got a PlayStation Vita and you're a fan of Killzone Mercenary, well, you might be a fan of this video, and I do recommend checking it out. It turns out some people got Killzone Mercury multiplayer for PS Vita back up and running online. If you're a fan of this game online, you may want to check out this video. So within the video, they showcase pretty much everything you need to know about the entire process, and they also have some helpful links in the description. I would say this is a big win for preservation and just a big win for gaming on the Vita. Next up is something you may not have been aware about before, and this is Gran Turismo 3 in ultra wide screen. Natively on 3 screens here with 3 PS2s. Yes, if you've got 3 PS2s and 3 copies of Gran Turismo 3, you can run this game in ultra widescreen mode on 3 different monitors. Now the video showcases how this was all achieved, and I don't remember the PS2 being able to do something like this. Maybe someone told me at some point and I just didn't believe them or what. Or I just completely forgot about it because I don't remember this. And I mean, I've got 3 PlayStation 2s, I've got a couple of copies of Gran Turismo 3, I might need another one. But at the same time here, I'm tempted to try this one out myself. And this to me is, well, let me know your thoughts about this. Does this make Gran Turismo 3 on 3 PS2s a lot more attractive to be able to run it on 3 different monitors? I think that's a pretty cool scenario. All 3 PS2s are linked together, and even taking a look at the footage here, and it does seem pretty smooth, a lot smoother than I would have expected. I mean, with PS2s, with them linked like this and with monitors up, I would have expected some desync at some point in time, but it does look pretty good overall. This guy's talking now, so, oh, here we go. So you can see the lines seem to line up pretty well on all monitors here. They seem to be in the right place on the track, and everything seems to be transitioning over pretty good. For PS2, I would say this is impressive. Now, I'm not going to get ahead of myself here and say it's perfect. There are some inconsistencies. It's not necessarily the best. This guy's all over the track. Anyways, if I pause the video here and take a look, you can tell the line isn't perfect. It does seem to be relatively in sync, though, at where they are on the track, and also just where everything else is. It's just, well, it's not perfect, but I mean, at the same time here, I would say this is, yes, very impressive. Next up here, if you're a fan of F-Zero on the SNES and wanted to play the game or something like the game on the Genesis, well, G-Zero has you covered. I'm assuming that G means Genesis. I could be wrong about that one. Maybe it means something else, and I've already said that in this video, so I'm not going to say it again. Anyways, here to me, this looks pretty cool. You can choose the number of opponents, and well, it's basically an interpretation of F-Zero on the SNES. All of the details are in this tweet, including links to some very helpful information. Next up, we're talking about Moon Studios, the studio behind Ori and the Blind Forest. And it turns out that Moon Studios is going fully independent. They say here after months of negotiation, they bought the rights for No Rest for the Wicked back, and Moon Studios is now fully independent. And I would say this is huge news for the studios, and possibly very good news because now they can take stuff in any direction they want. This video showcases a lot of stuff about No Rest for the Wicked. In fact, that's the purpose of their video there. The announcement of being fully independent was, I guess, just icing on the cake. Either way here, this new game looks pretty cool, and if you wanted to learn more about it, I do recommend checking out the YouTube video. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of Ori and the Blind Forest, and I'm a big fan of what I'm seeing here regarding this game. It seems like it would be up my alley and something I want to try out. And I'm also liking what the developer is doing here. It seems they're putting actual love into the game. I know love is kind of intangible, but at the same time here, it just doesn't seem like a shovelware game made for profit with microtransactions and all of that. Hopefully the studio doesn't go down that route, but at the same time here with what they're doing, it looks good to me. Next up, we're talking about Chrono Trigger, and if you're a fan of this game, it just turned 30 years old. And there is some very interesting information that was just posted. So this information comes right from the Square Enix Japan Twitter account, the official one, and it has been translated via Google, so it may not be 100% accurate. But they say here, as we mark the 30th anniversary, We will be launching various projects that go beyond the world of the game over the next year to express our gratitude to everyone who has played Chrono Trigger so far. The latest information will be posted on Square Enix official X and the Chrono Trigger account, so please look forward to it. And if I take a look at the official Chrono Trigger account, it says the exact same thing. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what this means. Maybe a remake, maybe a remaster, I don't know. I'm hoping it's something to do with the game that makes the overall experience better, or at least refreshes it in some way, shape, or form. Let me know what you think it's going to be. Next up here, we're talking about some Linux stuff, and if you're on Garuda, you may be excited about Garuda Cosmic. Now, Cosmic is the brand new desktop environment that's currently in alpha. It's being developed by System 76, and I really like what they're doing with it. Anyways, here, Garuda has adopted Cosmic as one of the flavors of desktop editions that you can get with it. And this one looks pretty neat. So if you are using Garuda and wanted to check out Cosmic, you absolutely can. Cosmic is still in alpha, so there will be bugs, there will be issues, and stuff won't necessarily be fully fleshed out yet. But at the same time, if you like to test stuff out, you could always just boot this up on a USB stick and go from there. Next up here, this could be something, it could be nothing. We're going to have to wait and see on this one, but Capcom has filed a trademark. A lot of people correct my pronunciation of it in the comments. Anyways, Capcom has filed a trademark for Dino Crisis. And this is hopefully something that Capcom is going to take a look at. If you remember a while back, Capcom asked about its previous franchises and what people were interested in. And Dino Crisis ranked extremely high on that list from everybody. Next up here, we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Borked 3DS. Borked 3DS is a fork of Citra, and we talked about this one in a previous video with the release of 2024.3.10 and pointed out that they might have made an issue calling this 2024 instead of 2025. Anyways, it seems they've responded here and released 2025.3.11. The first thing it says is subscribe to Mr. Sujano. The major bugs fixed here is correcting the year in the tag and also updating Vulkan. I would say this is not really an earth-shattering update between 2024.3.10 and, well, I guess 2025.3.11. It's more of just a fun update here. And they say otherwise this release is exactly the same as yesterday's release. Next up, we're talking about Xbox 360 emulation with Xenon. And Xenon is an Xbox 360 low-level emulator that I would say just had a massive breakthrough. So there's a brand new video of this one up on YouTube, and I would say this emulator is in very early stages of development, but they are making progress here because they showcase this thing booting a Linux kernel. At the time of filming, they're calling this one version 0.0.1. And I am very curious to see the future of Xenon and what it accomplishes and how good it gets. And speaking about stuff getting good, next up we're talking about Windows emulation on Android with not Win Now but Winlator. And Winlator just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Winlator version 10.0 Beta 2 just dropped. Now it does say it was released 2 weeks ago, but this isn't necessarily accurate. It seems they just edited the Beta 1 release. And that's because one of the updates here is Box 64 to version 0.3.4, which just dropped a couple of days ago. And we talked about this one when it released. So anyways, Winlator has been updated with the latest version of Box 64. They've added a workaround for Dino Crisis 1 and 2 video issues. And they've also added a brand new plugin. Next up here, we're talking about the SuperSega FPGA, or the Super SPGA, or whatever they're calling it now, but anyways, it just seems it's one thing after another with this initiative. In my opinion, this is another red flag in a sea, in an ocean of red flags, in a globe of red flags, in a universe of red flags. There's just so many red flags, in my opinion, about this project. Anyways, here it appears that they are now refusing, or trying to block people rather, from getting refunds. Now, if I remember correctly, and I might be misremembering here, but I don't think so. If I remember, SuperSega FPGA said they were going to be refunding everyone, or had refunded everyone except a few people that they were working with to try to refund and get things sorted. I could be wrong about that one, but I don't think so. Anyways, here it appears that Daniel from Slope's Game Room is one of those people who didn't get refunded. So they decided to do a chargeback. And it seems that SuperSega FPGA is disputing that chargeback, obviously trying to keep that money. Now, all of this information comes from TimeExtension.com, which I think is a fantastic website. And they are asking if you've dealt with SuperSega FPGA to contact them and share your experiences because they're trying to dig deeper into the matter. But it just seems that, well, this is not ending well for SuperSega FPGA, and This is well, it's a very unfortunate project overall, I would say. I feel bad for the people who spent money who are having trouble getting refunds. I feel bad for people who are legitimately excited about what SuperSega FPGA was promising. And I'm having a feeling here that this is probably not the last time we're going to hear about the SuperSega FPGA project or whatever comes next. We're going to have to wait and see on that one, but well, it's just one thing after another, and I wish I could stop talking about it, but this stuff is pretty big news in my opinion. And speaking about pretty big news, next up here we're talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, we talked about this game earlier on for a couple of reasons. One, for the release date. Two, for the fact that it's going to have de novo on it. And three was also because they said that this game was too good for the Steam Deck, that the Steam Deck's requirements were too low to run this game. It seems that Ubisoft has reversed that opinion, and this game will be running on the Steam Deck. To me, this is one of those weird situations where it seems as if the game wasn't optimized properly for the Steam Deck. Sometimes it just comes down to hardware power and, well, for example, trying to get a PS3 emulator to work on a phone from 10 years ago. That might be a struggle. And with the Steam Deck, it obviously does not have the highest PC specs, but at the same time here, I'm very impressed that Ubisoft will be supporting this on the Steam Deck, and right from day one having this possibly Steam Deck certified. Now, based on this information, I'm very curious to see how the game does perform on the Steam Deck. If it's anything like Monster Hunter Wilds, I won't be holding my breath in terms of overall compatibility. But at the same time here, this is, I would say, very good news for Steam Deck owners who are fans of the Assassin's Creed series. Next up, we're talking about something that we talked about before when it was just a rumor, and now it seems it's confirmed. And this may be good news or bad news for you, depending on, I guess, how you view Scopely. Anyways, this is the official announcement right from the Scopely website. Scopely to acquire Niantic Games business, which includes Pokemon Go. I guess they spent around $3.5 billion. Now, to me, that's a pretty big acquisition, and not just because it's a whole lot of money and Pokemon Go. It seems it's much bigger than just Pokemon Go. The acquisition will welcome Niantic's entire game development teams and Pokemon Go, Pikmin Bloom, Monster Hunter Now, and Campfire and Wayfair. So there is quite a bit there. I've seen a lot of differing opinions online on people saying that this is great because Pokemon Go will start to get updates that are better than what they were. And some people are saying that this means Pokemon Go is dead and should they transfer their Pokemon out of Go. Anyways, here it is the entire development team, and that is something to take note of. The entire development team seems to be remaining intact, at least for now. We're going to have to wait and see as to what Scopely is going to do with all of this, how they direct the game developers and basically tell them what to do and how to direct the game of Pokemon Go. But let me know if you think this is a good thing or a bad thing, and what do you think the future is of Pokemon Go and also Pikmin Bloom and Monster Hunter Wild, or Monster Hunter Now. I almost said Monster Hunter Wilds. And speaking about developers, next up here we're talking about one of my favorite Linux distributions, and that's Bazzite. And Bazzite has just unveiled or launched something pretty huge in my opinion, and that's Bazzite GDX. GDX stands for, well, it stands for something that I'm not going to say because some people will get angry about it because I've said it so much this video, but it also stands for Game Developer Experience. And this is pretty huge if you're a game developer and trying to develop something on Linux or to work with Linux, because Bazzite is becoming extremely popular. On top of Bazzite GDX, they're also launching Bazzite DX, which is developer focused. Bazzite GDX, they say, is the one that they're most excited about. This will be a game developer focused edition of Bazzite filled with awesome tools like Godot and whatever goodies the community builds with us. Its purpose is to be a kick-ass game developer workstation. And speaking about kick-ass, and this could be something, it could be nothing. We're going to have to wait and see. I'm saying that a lot this video. Anyways, here it's being rumored that they're going to be remaking Oblivion, and it will be launching at some point this year. So they say it's going to be announced in April and released in June. I wouldn't necessarily hold my breath for that one, but at the same time here, if this is true, I think a lot of people are going to be excited about an Oblivion remake. And speaking about remakes, next up we're talking about not demakes, but pre-releases. That was a really bad tie-in. Anyways, this is more of just a friendly heads up, and it's the latest from the Halo Classic Hub. They say excited to announce the release of the Halo 2 pre-release build pack for Xbox and XEMU. and this one does include the E3 2004 build, dated May 2004, and it does require the 128 megabyte RAM upgrade. Next up here, we're talking about Arcade Manager for RetroPie and Recalbox, and this just got a brand new update after a little over 2 years. For those who may not be familiar with it, it's a ROM management tool that will work with any arcade emulator ROM set. It helps you filter your arcade ROM collection, MAME and Final Burn Neo, by removing unwanted, bad, and unplayable games. So at the time of filming, Arcade Manager version 25.1 is the latest update here, and the developer says, after more than 2 years, I've finally found the motivation to work on this project again and improve it. The biggest new feature is the ability to check a ROM set against a DAT file, and to transform a ROM set into a non-merged one. On top of that, there's been some bug fixes, some additional features, some new translations, and even more. This one is 100% free and open source. Next up here, this is just a quick one and a fun heads up, and possibly an exciting heads up if you're a fan of recompilation projects and GoldenEye. So this is the latest on GoldenEye 007. It's called GoldenEye 007 Recompiled. And yes, it's a recompilation project, and yes, it seems that it's very active and progress is being made. Unfortunately, this is all the information I have. I don't have a release date or anything like that, but it does seem it's being recompiled for PC. And speaking about fun heads ups, next up we're talking about Tales of Phantasia on the PlayStation 1. Now this game was released I think in 1998 and re-released in 2000 on the PS1, and it was a Japanese exclusive. However, they've just released a brand new English fan translation. Now, I believe there was an English version of this game released, but I think it was for the Game Boy Advance. Anyways, here the PS1 version was never released in English, and there is a new fan translation, and it seems to be very well done. And it is up on romhack.ing. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. And 500 Sujano points for anyone who can guess where this background is taken from. And here's a hint, it was taken a few weeks ago. There's actually a video with me being there. Anyways, we talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state. And I'll see you tomorrow.